Okay. Right. Well, blessed Christ the King Sunday, and thank you for filling this room and being excited to hear about our Reformation Germany tour. I wish I had tons more time to prepare, but I think we're going to give you a nice snapshot of our trip, and we've got a lot of the folks who attended here, and they're going to hopefully share some learnings and thoughts as well. I collected as many pictures as I could and put them in a little bit of a slideshow. I'm going to do a little bit of a color or commentary as we go. But really, we would love this to be a time where you ask questions. And we can talk about Luther's life, we can talk about our experience, what we learned, just what we learned about Germany while we were there. You know, whatever questions you have, we want to field, and I think that'll really go to edifying our time together. And then finally, I also want to remind you that next week it's the first Sunday in Advent, and of course it's Thanksgiving weekend, which just simply means that sometimes it's a lesser attended. I don't know why. It doesn't have to be that way. A lot of people have family coming here to visit. But anyway, being realistic, there also is no kids Sunday school next week. So we will, however, have this time, and so we'll do open forum time, questions. You can bring your teenagers or your junior hires or your kids, whatever age. Maybe they've got some questions. So we'll have a fun time of open forum. So with that, let me open this with a prayer, and we'll take a look at our trip here. Gracious and loving God, let this time be fruitful and helpful, and give a glimpse of our experience, and then also help us learn more about the Reformation today. And so give us your Spirit, and we give thanks for this opportunity to get together today. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. So I'm sure I can give you my woes with my Apple iPhotos, but you're supposed to be able to move these around in order, but it wouldn't let me do it. So, and I researched it, I did everything right, but anyway. So we are going to start the slideshow, and I'll make some comments. Everything won't be in exact order, but I think it's going to be okay. I'll make some comments as we go, and then afterwards you can ask questions. We can go back to some pictures, different pictures, and whatnot. And I might pause the show as I go if there's not enough time. And then also to the attendees, if I mess anything up, tell me, no, that wasn't in that city, it was in this city, because it's very possible I'm going to do that. Oh, yes, and yes, thank you, Debbie. So in case I don't want to forget later, there are postcards and some other things that Debbie brought back from the trip in the back there. You can check that out before you go. So let's just get rolling here. This is the altarpiece above the town church in Wittenberg. We'll hear some more about this. And this is a back picture of that. But I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Stephanie, who got there ahead of everybody else, said, I'm here in Berlin. And you can see the big TV tower in the back. We started off at the wall in Berlin. And it's quite sobering to see that the vestiges of that time in history. And speaking of history, being at the Brandenburg Gate, all restored, but you see pictures of it after World War II, quite amazing. A lot of history happened there. So, awe-inspiring. Yep. So you see a lot of pulpits in a lot of churches that are really decorated up like that. We're going to talk about why that is. Mostly because of that guy. This is a statue of Luther in Berlin. And then this is the cathedral, I believe, correct, in Berlin. Absolutely awe-inspiring. I'm going to just pause here just for a minute. What do you see over here next to the pulpit? What does that look like? like columns, you know, and then you have the, you see these, I forget what these are called, these little guys on top. Somebody should know or tell me. Yeah, and there, you would see these in synagogues as well, going way back. But these pillars we have pictures on a coin of what the actual temple in Israel looked like, which got destroyed by the Romans. But these pillars have always marked, and you can see the architecture, holy spaces, really important spaces. And note they put a couple on either side of the pulpit. And this, when you see the effect of the Reformation, this is what you see. You see the pulpit becoming central and key, not just the chancel area where the Eucharist was consecrated and celebrated. But, you know, it didn't diminish that. You still see that. But you see the importance of the word being preached becoming so key. And so it's kind of telling you something. Where does God meet humanity? You know, that's what the temple was way back when. And just like you heard today, some of you heard the early service, we're hearing his voice. Well, you know, this is a way that they highlighted that. Now, you don't need all that fancy stuff to do it, but that's what that's about. This is a Lutheran, yeah. One of the churches that wasn't restored after the bombings in World War II. This is Dietrich Bonhoeffer's parents' house, where Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the famous Lutheran pastor that there's a movie out now on. Martin Luther King Jr., this is the Dr. King Memorial out in Berlin, came and preached at the church, the cathedral where we were at. And so I'm sure I can quiz my folks on this, but I won't put them on the spot. Do you guys know the connection between our Martin Luther, our namesake, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in this country? I see some people nodding. Yeah, Barb, yeah, you remember. Good. You've sure. Okay, I've got two people, so I better tell you. So, no, it's a really cool connection. So, I'm trying to remember his first name now, and it's escaping me for some reason. Mike, I think it was Michael, yeah. So, Michael King was a North American Baptist preacher, and back in the 30s, he took a tour to Europe and spent time in Wittenberg, which you see the town church in the background here, and learned all about Martin Luther. And his name was Michael King, and he was a Baptist preacher, and he also had a 2-year-old son who was Michael King Jr., I believe. And so when he came back, he was so inspired by the story of Martin Luther that when he came back, he took a different name, and he renamed himself Martin Luther King, and his little boy, 2-year-old boy, Martin Luther King Jr. So if you've always wondered, I wonder, is there a connection here? There is. There is. All right. So yes, please, Julie.
Go back a slide.
Yeah.
That's where Ronald Reagan stood and said, tear down this wall.
Oh, yeah, yes. No, that's good. No, that's good. Thank you. That's also where Ronald Reagan said, tear down this wall. That's right. The same spot. Yeah.
I did, there I offered something.
You did, Julie, but you have something else to offer too. Because if we have time, I'll try and play that video. Yeah. So we did some of this. After all, we were, we got to be, Brian and Julie there, Debbie we got there. So mom and daughter got to come together. That was cool. Katie made wine and beer. Speaking of Katie, now we are in Wittenberg, and this is the Augustinian monastery. And I'm sitting down outside the door to the monastery where Luther went in and out. And this was the Augustinian monastery in Wittenberg where Luther taught and lived as a monk. But then once the Reformation happened and the people started leaving the monasteries, Prince Frederick, the person that was in charge of Wittenberg and that area of what we know now as Germany, gave Luther the monastery, and it became his home. And you think that's a big place for just two people to live in. Well, it was, but they would have dozens, 2 dozen, 3 dozen people every night to dinner. Martin Luther's, if you want to look up some fun stuff that Luther said, you look up his table talk. And it's everything he said, his students were writing down. And those have been published, and they're called table talk. Now, they're a little less dependable than when we're hearing directly from him. But nonetheless, it's some really colorful, good stuff. You kind of get an idea of what their, dinner conversations were like. But Katie, when Martin Luther got married, he was in his 40s when he got married. So this was much as the Reformation has been underway for quite some time. And Katie was a part of a group of nuns that had escaped a nunnery in the legend in herring barrels. They hid out there and they got shipped away. But the reformers had a tough job to do, because now that all these people were leaving the monasteries, these nuns were leaving the monastery, and people became nuns in Luther's day and monks in Luther's day for 2 reasons. They wanted to be absolutely devoted to God, and that's the way you did it. Or, like in the case of women, their families couldn't afford a dowry or, to get them married. And so they would go into the nunnery. So when these women were leaving the nunneries, you got to find husbands for these ladies. Well, one of those was Catherine von Bora, and they tried to marry her off to some other people, and she said, "No way, forget it. No, she said, I'll have 1 of 2 people, and one of those was Martin Luther." And anyway, so they ended up getting married. Best thing that ever happened to Luther. Of course, the opponents of his said, well, this is why Luther did all of this, just so he could get married. It took him a long time till he got there, so I don't think that's... but anyway, they had, I think, 7 children. Katie righted Luther's house. Luther wasn't the best business person. By the way, Luther made 0 money on anything he ever wrote. And with the exception of Jesus, he's probably had more written about him and more of what he wrote preserved than any person in history, really. I think that's just about right. But anyway, he didn't make a dime. The printing presses went to town, though, with everything he wrote and made lots of money. But he did not. But he was supported by Prince Frederick in Wittenberg, because he was a professor and a teacher there. And so he got married, and he had this monastery, and Katie brewed beer and made wine. It's not just beer, Lutherans. She made some really great wine. And anyway, so it was just an incredible production. The last thing I'll say at this point before we go on to the rest other pictures, when Luther died, it was illegal to will any of your property to a woman. That was a no-go. But guess what Luther did? He willed everything to Katie, his wife, even though he knew it was not legal, and unfortunately it wasn't respected.
He wasn't bound by the law.
And he wasn't bound by the law. Although he would say, I'm bound by the civil law, but he didn't abide by that one. Yeah. Okay, some really great stuff. You get in the museum, you get to see these writings of Luther, and in his own handwriting, some of them. Really cool stuff, where you see his handwriting on the side of some of his works. This is early Luther. Lucas Cranach is the famous Reformation painter. So here we are on the streets of Wittenberg. It's a beautiful city now. My wife was there before the wall came down in CLU choir, and it was very different back then than it is now. This is a picture in the background of the town church. There's 2 churches in Wittenberg. I'm going to pause this one right here. So this is a close-up of the altarpiece that Lucas Cranach painted after Luther died. And it's behind the altar there. But it's absolutely stunning. You see here who on the one side? Luther. What's he doing? He's preaching, and who's he pointing to? To Christ on the cross. By the way, you Lutheran Protestants, sometimes people go, well, we don't have crucifixes. They didn't have a problem with crucifixes. And Luther didn't either. He didn't feel like, you're forsaking the resurrection by doing that. It's just a different emphasis. In our processional cross, what do we got? We got an empty cross on one side, we got Christ on the cross on the other. It's really, that's kind of a cool thing. You get both together. And I know that it's a different emphasis, but for Lutherans, you know, the cross is everything, and for all Christians, the cross is everything, obviously. But so Luther's pointing to Christ. The flowing linen there was meant to be a part of the resurrection, pointing to the resurrection. And there you've got the devout congregation listening to the preaching of the word. So this, the pulpit thing, which we'll talk about, I like to say the Lutheran movement is a recovery of the word in the church. Not just the Bible, which is certainly true, but the preached word of God. And so this is a beautiful, to see it in person is amazing. Lucas Chronic, I'm going too slow. Great. He was the guy that put into picture the Reformation. Did woodcuts and everything that were in the Bibles, and he and his son, he had a Chronic, the younger, I think they call him, and just really, I think we've underestimated the importance of this artist in getting out the message of the Reformation. So anyway, there you go. So in the one in Wittenberg, there's a castle church. You'll see that in a minute, and a town church. The castle church was completely destroyed in one of the wars after Luther died, and it's been rebuilt. But his tomb, which you're going to see, is still there where he was buried. But the town church is in essence exactly the way it was when Luther preached and when he was there. So, let's go back. Okay. Start back up. So there's the Eucharist and Luther receiving the cup. And then here, I'll just pause real quick. Who you see up here is Philip Melanchthon, and he's doing a baptism. The interesting thing about this, there's a story about this person. Do you guys remember?
The wife of the artist.
The wife of the artist, who was always complaining that she was never in the picture. And look, he put her in the picture.
In her finest color.
So Chronic kind of, bless him. But Melanchthon was not ordained. He was a professor. He was not a pastor. But here he is doing the baptism, which is really interesting to me. So very cool. And yeah. So you've got baptism and the Lord's Supper word. This is the actual font where Luther baptized people. This is the font of his day. All of his kids were baptized in this font.
And he was.
Luther was as well. He would have been, yeah. Was he?
No, Silvio. He was baptized in isolated.
He was baptized in isolated. Silvio, our guide, was baptized. Thank you. There we go. See this? All right. We got it. Beautiful. Our guide was baptized in that church. That was really cool. And that's the font that was there when Luther was there. So here we are now in front of the Castle Church, which has been rebuilt. It's beautiful. This is a memorial to the Wittenberg door, to the door where Luther put the 95 Theses, which some people think he probably didn't. I'm one of those historians who's not as skeptical about that. But nonetheless, when Luther posted his 95 Theses, he sent them to his bishop, and then the printing presses got a hold of it, and it went like wildfire. Melanchthon says he put it on the door. Melanchthon was Luther's right-hand man. I don't think he could invent that during Luther's lifetime, so I'm going to go with that. But hypercritical scholars don't think he did. But why do we have to mess these things up? Anyway, it's all good. So you're fine if you believe like me that he did put them. I can see him there, you know. But anyway, these are bronze replicas. He didn't, so yeah. But a great group pick there in front of the Wittenberg door. This is Luther's tomb. Show you one. I think there's one more picture. So as we're sitting there talking, and I'm thinking about what had happened in this space, after Luther died, the Emperor Charles finally he had had enough of the Reformation, and he had had things with the Ottoman Turks dealt with enough that he could really focus. And there was a league of princes and other nobles and their territories that had bound together, which Luther said was only okay for defense, not offense. But they were stronger than Emperor Charles' forces, but Charles was from Spain, and he had the Spanish soldiers come in, and according to Silvio, they were the Schmalkaldic League, as it was called, that these princes that were defending the Reformation were praying, and they were worshiping, and Charles snuck in while they were praying and defeated a far superior force. And so they came to this spot, and the Catholic officials wanted Luther's body exhumed and destroyed and burned at the stake, since they couldn't do it during his life. But Charles says, I think either go to war or I only deal with living people, and he left him there. And so because of that, that is his grave is there right in the castle church, which was more the fancy, official kind of church. And Philip Melanchthon is just to the right, is buried there as well. Oh, question? No. Oh yeah, Craig.
When I went to England, there was a lot of, when I was there in England and saw the churches there, they have a lot of people that are buried in the churches and around the churches. I mean, it's there's so many people. Now, is that kind of thing done in the German Luther kind of era?
Yeah.
I mean, is that?
Not as much. But there was still this sense that we're on the foundation of the saints kind of thing. Going all the way back to the great cathedral in Rome with Peter being buried there, but I don't think it was as much practiced. Although you still see vestiges of that even in Protestant churches. Where did they have the cemetery in our frontier churches and in the Midwest? Right behind the altar on the outside of the church. You almost think about a communion rail that extends out because we commune with the church on earth and the church in heaven. So yeah, that's a great question, Craig. But I don't know if others want to jump in on that question. I don't think as much, but they still were, celebrating that. And I think it would be different than maybe the Catholic view of that in some important ways. But yeah. So
I don't know if it's a Luther thing. When I was in the South, there are some people that were very important. And
yes.
What's going on? They're buried in buildings.
They're buried in the South. You see this happening. Yeah, absolutely. All right, good. I'll pause. I'll stay. Thank you, Craig. Great question. And yeah, raise your hand as we go. I think that's what's going to work better. So this is a picture of Luther. An Oriental, I guess you're not supposed to use that word. But anyway, a Far East kind of clothing. When I went back to so unfortunately for our group, although we would have never had time, it worked out just fine. My next trip I go, we'll stay 2 or 3 days in Wittenberg once they get the museum reopened, because it's the greatest museum of the Reformation and Luther's life there is. But they had temporary exhibits, which was just fine and really cool for us. But this portrait was there. And I didn't catch my eye the first time I went through, but the second time I went back, because I'm a geek. And I gotta get some more. There was a group of Korean Christians, most likely Presbyterians. Presbyterian Church is very large in South Korea. But they were there, and they were soaking up Martin Luther. And so here's a portrait of Luther, so the Reformation that started in Germany went all over the world, obviously. So that was cool. That was cool. Let's see what we got coming up here. Picture of Martin. This is the most famous picture of him in by chronic, and then Katie. Yeah. She had a tough life after Luther died. These are great reformers. You see Philip Melanchthon in the far right there, or I guess you're far right, and Erasmus. The community chest, did you know that concept of everybody contributing so you have a way to care for the poor? Originates in Wittenberg. Luther wrote extensive explanations on how it should be administered, and there were multiple keys so that one person couldn't get in there and steal it. And so that whole concept really comes out of the Reformation. How are you going to care for the poor? I always say the Lutheran Reformation has two pillars. Actually, it's not something I've come up with. Others, that have taught me have said that justification by faith alone, by grace alone, by Christ alone is one pillar, and the office of vocation of loving your neighbor is the other pillar that often is forgotten. Luther spent a ton of time of being concerned about the poor, and he also died. The last thing he was doing, he did preach in one of the churches there where he died, but he was trying to resolve a civic dispute between different dukes or whatever. There were magistrates, and he's like, you guys got to get this together. You're hurting people by not having... So he was very involved in earthly stuff as well. So this is Luther's own handwriting, and I believe a letter he wrote to the emperor after the Diet of Worms. He wrote it in his own handwriting. I don't know that it ever got to Emperor Charles, though. So, but he was saying, defending his case. And so to see that in his own hand, a more pretty German calligraphy, I guess, or maybe it was in Latin. No, it wouldn't have been in German, because Charles didn't know German. So, but anyway, Luther had written it very beautifully. This is the actual pulpit that's in the museum that Luther preached from. So the four gospel saints around the side. And some of us escaped to a real football game. Denise, Brian, Andrew, looking at some of the great artwork in the town church. Now we're moving on. Where is this? This is in Halle? Halle, yeah. There's a Handel Museum there.
That's where and the Beatles Museum.
And the Beatles Museum, which some of us went to.
Bill?
Yes.
That's where we were all reading the Reformation.
Yes. Oh, that picture back. It was Reformation Day. And on that day, and they had a special, what would you call it?
Well, it's like a Lutheran cross.
Yeah, but is it a croissant or like pastry type thing? And our guide went and got one, and he's eating it from us. We said, wait a minute. So we went in after we went and did whatever museum we did, and we bought all their Reformation pastries. Yeah, thank you. That's great. This is in Erfurt. This is a famous stained glass window in the back, and we were there on Reformation Day. In Germany, Christmas is a big, big deal. And the other holiday, because it wasn't a Sunday, obviously, they don't do I don't know if they do a Reformation Sunday like we do, but it's a day off for everybody. Reformation Day is a big deal, and so they have this beautiful service, a full orchestra up in the front and choir, and we got to be there. Of course, most of us don't know German. Marilyn helped us out the whole trip. Yes, please.
I was just going to say that in the former East Germany, Reformation Day is a legal holiday. However, in West Germany, the old West Germany, it is not. But the next day, which is All Saints Day, is a legal holiday.
In West Germany.
In West Germany.
Okay, wow, yeah. And that is something that you see. Julie, right up here. No? Yeah. Don? Yeah. I want to hear from you all.
I just would,
Hold it close. It's on.
that's me there on the right in the pink vest.
Yeah.
There she is.
Going up for communion
Yes.
during this hour-and-a-half long service, all in German. I had no idea what they were saying, but you knew you were in the right place.
Yeah.
You knew when they were saying the Lord's Prayer, and just walking up to communion, I can't talk about it. It was just emotional
Yeah.
thing for me.
Yeah.
And you actually and Sandy met the gentleman sitting in front of you with was from America, wasn't he?
He was from Germany, but he had lived in the States very well, and of course he heard us talking behind him, so he turned around and we had a great conversation. Yeah, young guy, yeah. In the tech industry. Yeah, this was just beautiful. I don't think we'll have time for me to play the video of some of the music. Great organ, you see again the pulpit. This is in Erfurt. This is where Luther was ordained as a priest. So this is where he was actually ordained. If you watch the Luther movie with Joseph Fiennes, you see him prostrate and this window in the back. The window in the back, well, I think I got a picture of it. I'll save. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful areas. Like I say, I wish you would have let me put these perfectly in order. But I think, yeah. So this, I went back to this spot later in the day, and most of the stained glass in Germany was destroyed in World War II. But they took these windows out. And there was a bomb that hit right next to this church, this cathedral, killed hundreds of people. There's a memorial to them. But just the shaking of it would have destroyed all these windows. And but these are 1,000 years old. So Mary Lou, Harold, you would have absolutely loved it. So, yeah, very good. Oh, and by the way, back there was the Luther's Rose, because that was already a thing, yeah. And we had some good food. Our guide there on the left. Right next to them, a couple from South Carolina joined us on the tour. Yeah. And then, Brian, how did Brian get back in here? Yeah. Okay, this is the Warburg Castle, where Luther was stowed away after the Diet of Worms to keep him from being killed. This is his desk, where he translated the Bible. The whalebone, I forget the significance. Again, another incredible, beautiful pulpit. I don't know that I'd have the guts to get up there and preach. Was this church, this is where we had the organ recital, right, Marilyn? No, anyway, that's all right. There's Andrew. That is a Hefeweizen. They have different glasses for each beer. So another beautiful altar area. I loved this one.
Yeah. And another church in Eisleben where he was born and where he died.
Yes, that's right.
Actually,
Yeah.
He was back there when he died.
Yeah. This is a memorial in Worms, which is in West Germany and largely still Catholic. This is Heidelberg, but just right before that was in the memorial they have to the Reformers, but very little Reformation stuff there. So. This is I guess Heidelberg, yeah. Okay, so there I am standing at the very spot that Martin Luther did his great defense of the Reformation in Worms. The shoe, I've stepped in the, no, I can't do that. I'm not worthy of that. But there's no building there now, but but they determined this actually was where the inquiry happened. And so you can kind of come in and step where he stepped. And this is his great speech of, I will not recant what I've written. I can do no other. Yeah. We're not sure if he said, "Here I stand," but anyway.
It sounds good.
It sounds good to me. We have a lot of sources there. So now this is a river cruise we took on the Rhine. A lot of castles in the background. Again, everything's not in order. Again, more good food. I found a great Dornfeller red wine. Oh, really good. Here's my gal. We had a lot of fun. And this is the couple from South Carolina. We got the castle in the back and the German flag. We had incredible weather for Germany. Very just sprinkled. It was like, it was amazing. So our guide at the apple tree, and now back at Luther's apple tree, they say. This is Russ and Sue Goodman. He's the CEO of our tour company that we went with. So in the there's a chapel right next to the town church, and we worshiped. Great acoustics. We sang. It was incredible. Again, me and Sandy giving her flowers. We're obviously flipping back to Berlin now. This is the iconic picture of a soldier fleeing East Germany to the west when the wall was being built. And that was really fascinating to me. Like I say, sorry these aren't in great order here. This is back to Heidelberg, which was such a beautiful city. We had such... This is our guide. You see the little man. This is an East German contribution. In East Germany, the psychologists figured out that children understood the symbol as well as the color. So they have these little, not just the green for go and red for stop, and so he has the red on the figure on the back. It's kind of an East German thing. So yeah. Yeah, and so we're just back at the front here. So I think I'm going to pause. I think we're close to the end. Yeah, seeing the wall is pretty wild. Yeah, because you had the wall, but then you had a big no man's zone. This is a memorial to regards the Holocaust. It was very moving and interesting. We're back teaching at Wartburg, not Wartburg, at Worms. This is a picture of Katie in front of the monastery in Wittenberg. Yeah, again, the castle. Yeah, it's quite beautiful. And it has an amazing history. I'm back in the shoes again. How did we get so many of those in here? Yeah. This is Handel, isn't it? Yeah. We went to a museum about him. And we're back to the altar piece there. So that's just some pictures to give you an overview. We've got a good 10, 15 minutes here for questions. I certainly could talk for hours about the Reformation. But yeah, so going back to the back, Wade, and then raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you if you have other questions or comments. And if some of the folks who went, if you just have a thought that's going like Julie shared it, regarding the worship service in Erfurt there, great.
Mine was just, I think, a comment observation. I'm doing a study on Revelation right now, and I'm at that part that's talking about the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
And how because of the few amount of letters available, how numbers were interchanged and used.
Yeah.
The point I want to get to is I was looking at that. I mean, most scholars believe it comes in on Nero as the mark,
right.
when you do the numbering. But I'm using William Barclay as my guide.
Yeah.
I thought it was curious that as the Bible or Revelation was being interpreted, that Martin Luther was included also as the mark of the beast. That just kind of blew me away when I read that in that study.
Yeah.
Along with a lot of others, Caesar, but Nero was accepted by most biblical scholars. And when I saw Martin Luther's name there, I thought, wow, that he was really hated then.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
So
just an observation.
No, it's good. And Luther was the bull, the papal bull, which is a decree that the Pope sent to Wittenberg and sent out to all the land. It called Luther a wild boar in God's vineyard. It's interesting that Chronic then in one of the paintings in Wittenberg has a vineyard, and the Catholic side is not looking so good, and the Protestant side is, so they went and ran with that. But Luther was understood as the devil. At the beginning, he was called a drunken monk that needs to be sobered, or whatever. But Luther returned the favor. He actually, in his day, thought that the end of the world was coming. It could be any time, and he called the Pope the Antichrist. Yeah. So he went down that road too. But I think Luther would say anybody that opposes the gospel is that. So it's not just the Pope. But oh no, he got really soured on the church in that regard. And so yeah, the barbs went both ways. Yeah. By the way, Wade, here's a fun little thing since you're studying this, because I'm a manuscript geek, the number of the beast is 666 when you look at that. But one of the older manuscripts of Revelation is 6:1, I think 6 or 1:3. And everybody just discarded that as a mistake, because most manuscripts say, but recently they discovered another one, and it has the other number. That's 613. So, but it can still work out to be Nero or Neron, in fact. But, so all those people with 666 on their shoulders or whatever, sorry, you got it wrong, dude. But anyway, no. But nonetheless, and of course that's not the point. But, Luther would say about Revelation, he struggled with that book in some regards, but that's where we get all of our prayer language. This is the feast of victory for our God. Where's that come from? Revelation. Some people say, well, you Lutherans don't ever talk about Revelation. We sing it every Sunday, at least part of it, But yeah, there's different ways to look at that book, which you're going to enjoy getting into as you go. Good, excellent question. Great comment. Other questions about Germany, about Luther, about, filling in the blanks. Okay, right here, Bill, and then Kevin. Yeah.
Barbara and I went on the previous Luther tour that we did with the church in, I think it was North Dakota or South Dakota.
Okay.
And a great experience. I recommend we do this every so many years, so the people in this church keep this up.
I wish it wasn't as costly as it is, but travel is expensive. And this trip was 32 without air, or 34 without air, 3,400. I think it's with everything you get in a tour like this, and faith-based expeditions have never disappointed me. And this was their first trip to Germany. They asked me to lead it, so it was kind of our tour, but not. Folks on the trip were hearing about a trip he had just got back from, where they did Scotland and Ireland. So maybe that's in our future too. Please, over here. Oh, over here. Yes, Tom.
Hey, Bill. Throughout the trip, we were able to pause at various points and do some sort of spiritual exercise, either formal or semi-formal service. And that was very good. I enjoyed that a great deal.
Yeah.
Second of all, towards the end of our period, Sandy conducted an exercise, a sensing, last-minute drunk dump of what we learned on the show, on the trip.
Yeah.
And we met that South Carolina couple. Was it South Carolina or North Carolina?
North Carolina.
I think it was South.
South Carolina. And they told me during that session that they learned so much about Luther, they were really questioning their denomination. Perhaps we just,
I didn't want that. They're great Christian people. They didn't need to do that. No. They actually, we worked really well. I think they're in a non-denominational church, and we loved them, and they loved us, and we celebrated it. But yeah, we also talked about some of the differences.
And the last point was the expertise of our guide, which was phenomenal.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Tom. And that, Sandy's leading did a really creative way for us to unpack and talk about our experience. It was awesome. And it's great to hear that they had such a great experience. So, yeah. Please. Oh, over here. Yes.
The church he's buried in, what's the history of it before he was around?
Okay, so the Castle Church, I'm looking for some help here on this. I can't remember when it was built, but the Castle Church, I want to say it was in existence for 300 or 400 years before Luther, going back to like the 1200s, if I remember right. And it was the place where the prince, went to church. It was the special, occasion kind of church. And the town church is where everybody went every Sunday, and Luther preached every Sunday. But he preached in the Castle Church all the time. So it was around for at least a couple hundred years before Luther. And then after Luther, I forget whether it was the 30 Years' War or what it was completely destroyed. But his tomb, his burial spot was still there. And so then now they've rebuilt it. Yeah, great question. Yeah, please. Go close.
Our Reformation Day service that we attended, even though the service was not in English, we all felt the Spirit, the Holy Spirit in that. And also through the music in that service. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Phenomenal music. And wasn't it all written by Luther and Bach?
Well, there's a lot of Bach and a lot of Luther
Yes.
in that service. And of course, Bach is famous Lutheran.
And then our service that afternoon, which you led in the little small chapel.
Oh, right, in Erfurt, yeah.
In Erfurt,
Yeah.
was very, very moving.
Yeah.
Where it was just us, just our group,
Yeah.
with our little service and our little music with you and your guitar.
Yeah.
That just really stayed with me.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that, Debbie. Yeah. We were good singers.
Yes.
They did you proud. Yeah.
So I have a question about the German church. Is it de-churched also?
Yes, okay, great question. So the question was about what is the status of Christianity, the German church, is it de-churched also? I think everybody's nodding. The easy answer would be yes to a far greater degree than here. Yeah, way worse. And it's been going on. A lot of people think, well, when did it start? In Germany, it was already happening before World War II. The church was not strong. They got swept into Hitler's German Christian movement. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer, of course, and there's a movie out. It's out now, I believe.
It came out yesterday.
Came out yesterday on this Lutheran pastor who resisted and then ended up participating in a plot to kill Hitler, and then was martyred at the end of the war. So it tells his story. Although some of our guides said that the Bonhoeffer scholars in Germany aren't too happy with the movie. So I don't know. You decide. But nonetheless, going back to Kathy's question. I think we're talking like what?
You said like 10% of the.
10%, but please help us out. Yes, and Nellie's here, so Nellie, please. Yeah. Oh, Tom's gonna talk. Okay. Nellie, no, she's from Germany. So yeah. Yeah. What do you think? Yeah.
The de-churching of the people in Germany, a big problem was the establishment and application of a church tax to go to Catholic or the Evangelisch, which is Lutheran church in Germany.
Yeah.
It's just too dire a cost that people don't want to pay it.
So you pay, I think I heard something like 42% in taxes in Germany of what you make. And then if you want to get a baptism or be confirmed or marriage or a burial, you have to pay the 7% additional tax. It's not good incentive to be in the church, really.
You can opt out.
But you can opt out, and you can go to church, but you cannot get a baptism, and you cannot get married, and you cannot get buried by a pastor if you don't do the tax.
Right here.
Tax goes to the government, and then the government
They take care of it.
moves that to the church. Yeah.
Even though
Right here.
Lutheranism is the church, the state church.
Yes.
Most people don't go.
Right. So the guy that back when I was there in 2016 said about 8% of the people in Wittenberg even claim to be Christian. So Luther for the German people, I would say in general, and you guys can know more about Germany than me, would say that Martin Luther is the creator of the German language. He's the person for freedom and this type of thing. They've really let go of the theological, more religious side of things. But they still celebrate Luther and Katie's wedding day every year in Wittenberg, and I want to be there for that because it sounds like a great party. So, yeah, Paul, yeah.
I have two questions. One is, where you were standing in Luther's, or the representative Luther's shoes, wasn't that outside a Catholic church?
Was it? I don't know. It was,
Yeah,
yes.
and when we went into the church, Silvio got in trouble for pointing out a stained glass window of Luther in the church, and I can't remember why that was there. Could you explain that?
Yeah, well, Luther was they put Luther in one of the stained glasses in this Catholic church. So Worms is in, what would you say, the more southern part of Germany today, or what, west? Southwest, yes. And so more of a Catholic area, so not a lot of Lutheran influence there, but that's where Luther made his stand. And yes, so we went into a beautiful Catholic cathedral there, and Silvio was not supposed to talk, but we have these whisper things, you know, where he has a microphone and we have the earpieces so he could whisper, you know, he's just whispering, and pointing out Luther to us in one of the stained glasses, and they gave him a letter. This is your last warning.
It was a very, very brief comment.
Yeah, it was very brief.
Very
But
brief.
anyway, so the tension's still there. I guess. Denise, please share something. Yeah.
Okay. It was I don't know if you know, Luther also is the person that came up with the first congregational hymnal.
Yes.
And it was
Say some more about that.
And it was the 500th anniversary. And hence so much music for Reformation. And so they were celebrating that communal singing.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Denise.
We got to see it in the,
You got to see the actual,
in the
original hymn, one of the original hymnals they have. So when I say the Lutheran movement, and I always say the Lutheran, if you want a definition of Lutheranism, I don't even like that term, but it would be a movement within the church for the gospel. We don't claim to be a new religion that started 500 years ago. So I like the movement within the church for the gospel, but that took shape in preaching and in singing. And so Luther wanted the people to be able to sing in their own language, not just hear the gospel, but to sing it. Because he knew when you were singing, you were preaching.
and who knew that statement better than any of us? Zan.
Yeah, that's right. Our brothers and sisters in Christ who were not from the Lutheran tradition. Yeah.
And I'll just say without the microphone,
Zan just texted me that she's watching us live.
That's awesome.
And I also said we're going to make her a Lutheran.
No. They might make us the other way. We're one in Christ, which is so cool. But other comments, questions. I love that one. That more from participants. Anything that didn't get said that you just really think we would hear, and then we maybe close up shop here.
One thing I noticed was how quickly and deeply we all bonded with each other. And I was thinking about that. I've traveled a little bit with other groups. Nobody that I knew, just you're on the same bus with them and whatever. But I think it was because we were all there. We had this common focus. And I noticed that with the Israel trip too. You just, when you're all there for the same reason, coming from different aspects of life, it was great.
Yeah.
It was just great.
I can say that something when I kind of just happened into this kind of, these tours and doing the ones, the Holy Land and then Greece and Rome, and now this one in Germany. I didn't think about, I knew it'd be great education, great experience, but the bonding or the community making doing this together is really fabulous. So,
and we were a great group.
And we were a great group. They were on time. They never made it late, ever. We got big accolades.
Russ said we were
Sandy,
Yeah, Sylvia.
I think the thing that I walked away with the most about the Reformation was that for any movement to happen, you needed somebody who was willing to stand up, so you had Luther. You needed somebody to advertise it, and so that was Melanchthon and then the artist.
Yeah.
And then technology. And so for that day, it was the printing press. And so you need those things and positions in order to make something spread. And I just think it's an interesting tale for our times now. Like what will this technology, AI, what will that do to the faith? What will that do to what will get promoted? Who will get promoted?
Right.
And how does that work? So,
Yeah.
and then I want to say I'm always privileged to be able to take time off to go on these tours. You really do have in front of you, I think, one of the most sincerest, most devoted experts on Luther, Martin Luther. Doctorate. And the other thing is, I just want to say it's really good for your marriage, because when you're with each other day to day, you're not always talking about theology. you're talking about the garbage and who's taking care of the dogs and stuff. And when I get to go on these tours, I'm like, wow, he's really smart.
Thank you, Sandy. On that note, thank you. That touches my heart, and it's wonderful to be able to do that with her. I wouldn't want to do it. Oh, one more, Amy, please.
That's hard to follow up.
No.
I
Go
just
real
wanna-
close,
this-
Amy.
oh,
Yeah.
This has to do with kind of the de-churching. So my daughter was raised to go to church, and she's 28, doesn't really go anymore, but she went with us on this trip. And you might think, yeah, she was only looking for her Starbucks cup, but she was paying attention. When we got to Austria, we were on this trip. We went to Austria after Germany, and we were on this tour, and we were explaining Martin Luther started his own church, and she's like, no, that's not what he did. So, yeah, she was listening. So maybe getting kids to go on trips, realize back to church.
I love it. Hey, I've got to say one more thing. I know we need to take down, and we need to quit. Yeah, Luther did not want to start a new church. He wanted to reform. Silvio, our guide, told me something that actually crushed I don't know if this is a good way to end, but when we were in Wittenberg, there was a school teacher taking a group of kids around the Castle Church in Wittenberg, and he was listening to what she was saying, and it was horrible about Luther. He was championing the Holocaust, and he was the same as Hitler, this kind of stuff. And it made me think, now Hitler, Luther, that's a complex subject, and Luther said some things he never should have, and we talked in depth on this trip about that, and we, what he said at the end of his life that Hitler kind of, manipulated and used is horrible, but, we make what we want out of our heroes sometimes, and you see that with Luther. But I think Luther would want to be known, and this will be a good way to finish. He said, most of my writings aren't worth much, except for like 1, 2, 3 things. But he would want to be known to be pointing us back to Christ, which all Christians today have benefited from. Catholic, Baptist, Pentecostal, we all are cut from that same cloth of, that what we need to do is go back to Christ and have faith in Him. So anyway, so there you go. So that's what he'd want to be known for. This was awesome. Thank you to the participants. Thank you for caring out there. Great work. Thank you to George and Zan from South Carolina. God's go in peace. Serve the Lord. Mark will help get us set up here.
You can see the horses. Did you see the horses go over the wall?
No.
Would you like to?
At some point, I would. Yeah.
Easy.
How?
When it's not winter out here.
Yes.
You go over to Joseph, Oregon.
Okay.
That's where they were, whatever you call it, makeup.
Okay.
Life size.
Wow.
It's this tiny town.
Wow, and they've made the whole thing.